And the United States is a shining jewel the globalists want to bring down. And they will use terrorism as the pretext to get it done. So that's coming up in the second half of the show. Very important.
It's not going to happen overnight, folks. But we can do this. You're listening to Hardcore Harry, and I am death to the New World Order, streaming to you live at freethinkradio.com, unitedtruthseekers.com, and eternally at d2nwo.com.
Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. Do you want to know what it is? It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
You're listening to Hardcore Harry, and I am death to the New World Order, streaming to you live at freethinkradio.com, unitedtruthseekers.com, and eternally at d2nwo.com.
The previous Pope, John Paul II, was an Ashkenazi counterfeit Jew, as have been many of his predecessors. He visited the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem and asked the Zionist counterfeit Jews to forgive the Vatican. During his trip, which the Pope called a personal spiritual pilgrimage, he visited the major Christian religious sites and conducted masses in Chorazim, Nazareth, and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. He also visited the Western Wall and inserted a letter in a crack that read, "God of our fathers, you chose Abraham and his descendants to bring your name to the nations. We are deeply saddened by the behavior of those who in the course of history have caused these children of yours to suffer, and asking your forgiveness, we wish to commit ourselves to genuine brotherhood with the people of the covenant. Jerusalem, 26th of March 2000. Signed, John Paul II."
All part of the deception, because the Ashkenazi counterfeit Jews that he was speaking to are not descended from Abraham.
The Ashkenazi banksters have murdered tens of millions of Christians and gained control of the USA. These people are evil mass murderers and should be treated as such. George H. Scherf Jr., now known as George Herbert Walker Bush, joined and eventually became head of the CIA. He later became president unlawfully because he was born in Germany, not in America. John Fitzgerald Kennedy, also known as JFK, who was a true American patriot and a brave man, found out about their plans for America and world domination, and threatened to disband the CIA and break it into so many pieces that they would never be able to put it back together again. He also found out that the Ashkenazi counterfeit Jewish state in Israel was acquiring nuclear weapons and sought to stop them from having them. However, they've now acquired the capability to strike anywhere in Europe, including Great Britain. He enacted Executive Order 11110, which took away the banksters' power to control America's currency by JFK issuing silverback dollars that were interest-free, debt-free. The silverback dollars would kill the banksters' debt money Federal Reserve notes that they loaned to the American government at interest, in order to get the American people into an ever-increasing downward debt spiral, into bankruptcy and abject poverty. He also wanted to end the Vietnam War, which was making billions of dollars for the banksters' military-industrial oil complex that President Dwight D. Eisenhower warned the American people about in his resignation speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. We now stand 10 years past the midpoint of a century that has witnessed 4 major wars among great nations. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our societies. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
The sleeper must awaken. The sleeper must awaken. That's 4 very compelling reasons why the Ashkenazis wanted JFK dead. This war business policy is outlined well in the film titled Good Will Hunting.
So why do you think I should work for the National Security Agency?
Well, you'd be working on the cutting edge. You'd be exposed to the kind of technology that you wouldn't see anywhere else because we've classified it. Superstring theory, chaos math, advanced algorithms.
Code breaking.
Well, that's one aspect of what we do.
Oh, come on. I mean, that is what you do. You guys handle 80% of the intelligence workload. You're 7 times the size of the CIA.
We don't like to brag about that, Will. But you're exactly right. So the way I see it, the question isn't, why should you work for the NSA? The question is, why shouldn't you?
Why shouldn't I work for the NSA? It's a tough one. But I'll take a shot. Say I'm working at the NSA and somebody puts a code on my desk, something no one else can break. Maybe I take a shot at it and maybe I break it. And I'm real happy with myself because I did my job well. But maybe that code was the location of some rebel army in North Africa or the Middle East. And once they have that location, they bomb the village where the rebels are hiding. 1,500 people that I never met, never had no problem with, get killed. Now the politicians are saying, oh, send in the Marines to secure the area because they don't give a shit. It won't be their kid over there getting shot, just like it wasn't them when their number got called, because they were all pulling a tour in the National Guard. It'll be some kid from Southie over there taking shrapnel in the ass. He comes back to find that the plant he used to work at got exported to the country he just got back from, and the guy who put the shrapnel in his ass got his old job, because he'll work for 15 cents a day and no bathroom breaks. Meanwhile, he realizes the only reason he was over there in the first place was so that we could install a government that would sell us oil at a good price. And of course, the oil companies use a little skirmish over there to scare up domestic oil prices. A cute little ancillary benefit for them, but it ain't helping my buddy at $2.50 a gallon. They're taking their sweet time bringing the oil back, of course. Maybe they even took the liberty of hiring an alcoholic skipper who likes to drink martinis and play slalom with the icebergs. It ain't too long till he hits one, spills the oil, and kills all the sea life in the North Atlantic. So now my buddy's out of work. He can't afford to drive, so he's walking to the job interviews, which sucks because the shrapnel in his ass is giving him chronic hemorrhoids, and meanwhile he's starving because every time he tries to get a bite to eat, the only blue plate special they're serving is North Atlantic scrod with Quaker steak. So what did I think? I'm holding out for something better. I figure, while I'm at it, why not just shoot my buddy, take his job, give it to his sworn enemy, hike up gas prices, bomb a village, club a baby seal, hit the hash pipe, and join the National Guard. I could be elected president.
The Banksters, therefore, like they did to Abraham Lincoln, James A. Garfield and William McKinley, only this time very publicly, murdered JFK in Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas, on November the 22nd, 1963, in a coup d'etat to take over control of America. Many people claim that George Sirf Jr., now known as George Herbert Walker Bush, was in Dallas that day, working for the CIA and banksters. But he has always denied it, even though they claim there is proof that he was there. On the 22nd of November, Bush stated that he was proceeding to Dallas, Texas, would remain in the Sheraton Dallas Hotel and return to his residence on the 23rd of November, 63, the following day. And here he is, trying to convince everyone that Lee Harvey Oswald killed JFK, while smirking about it and talking about conspiracy theories, like his son did over the inside job 9/11 attacks.
After a deluded gunman assassinated President Kennedy, after a deluded gunman assassinated President Kennedy,
after a deluded gunman assassinated President Kennedy,
our nation turned to Gerald Ford and a select handful of others to make sense of that madness. And the conspiracy theorists can say what they will, but the Warren Commission report will always have the final definitive say on this tragic matter. Why? Because Jerry Ford put his name on it, and Jerry Ford's word was always good.
Wow. There is a little bit of history that I think a lot of people are, in fact, missing. I know while I may have seen that once before in the past, it's not something I've remembered at all, and it does run just right exactly with what Bush did after 9/11. And I remember him point blank sitting there saying, "We will not tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories about the attacks of September 11th. There stood his father after JFK was shot, and he smirked when he said what happened by a lone gunman. He smirked. And then he says, regardless of what the conspiracy theorists say, regardless what the conspiracy theorists would say, like father, like son. Unbelievable. But the video doesn't lie, does it? I'm not quite sure what that video was about to the point where I'll dwell on any one in particular subject. So we'll just take it in as a whole. Probably have a break coming up in a moment anyway. Which is to say that, and I think most people have been watching my broadcast by now, have got to be coming to the conclusion, there is no end to the material that I can play. No end to the subjects I can come up with. No end to the angles at which I can hit any subject and prove the quote-unquote conspiracy theorist dead right. Truth is, conspiracy is very, very commonplace. Very commonplace. All it means is two people made an agreement to commit a crime. Two or more people made an agreement to commit a crime. Now, interestingly, the word conspiracy or conspire actually means to breathe together. And it brings up images of people who are in the same room and they're breathing together in the same room. And so there's a trust issue. Some people may not follow that. But all you have to do is watch an episode or two of Survivor. Not that I recommend watching television, but it is a perfect example, where people have to vote somebody off the island. Say there's 8 people there. I'm out of time. All right, let's have a short break. You're listening to Hardcore Harry, and I am death to the New World Order, streaming to you live at freethinkradio.com, unitedtruthseekers.com, and eternally at d2nwo.com.
Our freedom is at stake.
People want freedom. They want to be able to hunt.
Liberty is the word.
Everything is going, our traditions, and this is what we're fighting for.
They marched in protest, a silent procession of a people grasping for one last chance to resist, shamefully admitting they only have themselves to blame for government policies that threaten their way of life, their security, and the future of democracy in Britain.
We've been very apathetic for years, and now we're paying the price for it.
It's a disgrace, really. And we've seen these fundamental liberties eroded in the last 20-odd years in England, all sorts of legislation that should never have appeared.
Sportsmen and shooters fooled by politicians into thinking that England's age-old tradition of fox hunting would never be targeted or banned, now realizing, perhaps too little too late, that their traditions are no more secure than their freedoms.
This isn't about banning fox hunting. This is about the liberty of the individual to choose for him or herself what they do.
A future that's in doubt, and the largest peaceful protest in British history to try to change that has got many asking, where were these voices 6 years ago when there was an outright ban on handguns and pistol shooters were forced to surrender their firearms, confiscated by the government to be destroyed?
We hear people saying the proposed ban on fox hunting is the thin end of the wedge. I am a pistol shooter. As far as I'm concerned, we've already swallowed the wedge. And where does it go next?
Liberties that have already been sacrificed for the politicians' false promise of a safer society. Gun bans that, as predicted, have simply backfired.
We've seen about a 40% increase in firearms crime since the ban was introduced. That is not a success in my book.
We need to be armed, you know, we're not safe any longer. Everything is changing.
It's very simple. The authorities have no way of controlling criminals, so they control the law-abiding, because we're an easy target.
And now, some members of Parliament are questioning the government's anti-gun agenda, an agenda that has, without a doubt, failed.
The use of weapons in crime has risen dramatically. And it's very difficult to get government departments to openly accept the fact.
Politicians refusing to face the facts, while the police are forced to every day.
It's totally out of control.
This police officer, who feared he'd lose his job for speaking out, asked to remain anonymous. He said for the first time ever, bobbies are carrying firearms, but they're still outgunned by criminals who can buy whatever they want on the black market.
Every officer now in this country gets issued with body armour. When I joined the police service back in the 80s, We didn't have any of this. We had a wooden truncheon and a set of chain link handcuffs. The firearms laws have been tightened up since. Why do we still need this equipment? Simply because the criminals have the weapons and they're prepared to use them.
Gun policy's gone tragically wrong, and police morale at an all-time low.
I feel let down by the politicians, by the senior management in the police. I feel at present I cannot give the public the service they demand and expect.
And as this officer made very clear, it's a law built on a lie.
The politicians, basically, they have misled the public. They said, if we ban handguns, the country's going to be a safer place. They ban the handguns, the country is not a safer place. Why are British people not to be trusted? And I think that says a lot about the government.
Citizens left defenseless, now victims of the very laws passed to protect them, and asking how many more Tony Martins will there be. Martin, a Norfolk farmer, was forced to protect himself when no one else would, not the police and not the British justice system. What happened at this farmhouse owned by Tony Martin 4 years ago has struck a real nerve, not only in this country, but internationally. 2 men broke into Tony Martin's house. Both of them were shot. One of them was killed. And the man who fired that gun, Tony Martin, was initially sentenced to life in prison for murder. But many people think Tony Martin should never have spent 1 day in jail. They say he was just an innocent man protecting himself and his property.
Tony should not be in a jail, not for what he did. He was perfectly within his rights, in my view, to look after his own property and his own life.
My thoughts is that I would do exactly the same, put in the same situation. I would not hesitate to do exactly the same.
I personally believe that, you know, if you're in your own house and people come in, then they should expect whatever they get.
Everybody around was saying the same thing. You must have a right to defend yourself. It has gone too far, swung so far in favour of the criminal.
Criminals like those in Tony Martin's case who were no strangers to the law. 16-year-old Fred Barris, who was killed, already had 29 convictions. And 30-year-old Brendan Farron had 34 convictions and had been in prison for burglary. He was sentenced to 3 years for trying to break into Tony Martin's home. But after only serving 18 months, he's free while Tony Martin remains in jail. And he's now threatening to sue Martin using taxpayers' dollars.
The system is on the side of the criminal, not on the side of the victim. Go and rob somebody and then sue them because they've damaged you. It's absurd.
The injustice of a justice system. And although Tony Martin has had his life sentence reduced to manslaughter, he still sits behind bars here at High Point Prison in Suffolk, England, counting the days until he's released. I was the first reporter from the United States allowed to visit with Tony since he's been in prison. And although no cameras were allowed, I was able to talk with Tony by phone. And what you're about to hear is Tony Martin in his own words about that fateful night.
Well, I've never really said it publicly before, but I've had a pretty raw deal. I personally think it's very, very wrong for somebody to have to live in their house in fear, but for some unknown reason, there are people in this country who don't know the difference between defending yourself, protecting yourself, and malice aforethought. I thought it was the people that came in the house that were malice aforethought.
Chief Constable of Norfolk said that Tony shouldn't have used his gun, that he should have yelled for help. Well, you've seen the isolated location. I could scream furthermore and nobody would hear me at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's just a nonsense, I do believe.
It could have quite well been the dead man, because there's no question. The police in this area is totally inadequate. I mean, we get little or no support.
Police protection, residents here say they can't count on, and they're fed up with being denied the right to defend themselves.
We've been broken into several times before. And most of the people around here at one stage or another has either been broken into or had an attempt to do so.
This wasn't the first time you had a problem.
No, that was the third time this year that somebody had broken the house, yeah. You actually become a prisoner in your own house.
I have every sympathy. I genuinely do. But I can't say that the law shouldn't be what the law was. What I can say now is that because of that, we ought to review that particular law.
I think the Americans have a saying about it's better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6. Tony Martin tried that venture. He was judged. He is in prison. the story is not yet finished.
And neither is the story of a struggle to reclaim rights these honest citizens have already lost. Costly mistakes of trusting in a government that has left them unprotected. Their message to gun owners in America is simple. It will happen to you if you let it.
Jolly well could, and they ought to realise that. If they saw what we're seeing in this country, then they'll fight for it.
If you don't do anything, you will lose your liberties, and make the effort. Don't be apathetic. Get out there and fight.
Learn from our experience and don't give an inch. Your Constitution matters, your freedom matters.
Pericles said it way before me. Freedom is only for those who have the guts to defend it.
Well, we're pretty well screwed then, aren't we? We're pretty well screwed. If freedom is only for those who have the guts to defend it, I don't see many of those people out anymore. You know, I see people who don't even know what the Constitution says. It wasn't long ago in this country, a lot of people hunted. I mean, I've seen a change in my lifetime, even in just the last 20 years. Most of my family hunted 20 years ago. Now, I don't know if any of them actually go out and hunt. And I'm talking people who still are healthy enough to hunt, still live near the woods, still have guns, still need food, but they just don't get up and go hunt anymore. I mean, it's almost like it has been. It's like people have been domesticated. That's really what's going on. People have been domesticated. And so they go to the store and they buy their meat. They go to the store and they buy their food. Why grow a garden when you can just go to the store and pay somebody else to give you food? Why go hunt when you can just go to the store and buy the meat? That's what we're seeing. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't have time to hunt. With the broadcasting I'm doing, hunting does take some time. You got to go out, get to know the land, look at the deer trails, look for rubbings, look for them scratching at the ground. I mean, it does take a lot of time. But I could still hunt, just not do any of the research and just hope I get lucky and some deer walks by or shoot him in the face. But I'm pretty disappointed to see so many people who used to hunt just quit. It's not just a tradition that's gone, it's an independence that'll never be regained. That's an independence that'll never be reacquired. When people don't raise their children to hunt or to fish, the day is never going to come that that child who does a million other things but it doesn't even know what it means to hunt or gather, the day will never come that that child says, you know what, I think I'm going to go kill something and eat it. That day will never, never come. A lot of people have worked very hard over a long period of time to instill that tradition and that skill, whether it's hunting, fishing, trapping, you name it. A lot of people have worked very hard to instill these skills in their children, and then they instilled them in their children. And go on down the line, and let's face it, this goes back to the caveman days. And in one generation, it's vanishing. Just like that. After thousands of years of hunting and gathering, we, in our lifetimes, have witnessed this survival skill vanish right before our eyes. There's still a few people who go out and do it, but not like there was 20 years ago. What does this say? You know, when you talk about depopulation, what does it say that people can no longer hunt and gather? Entire nations have been completely disarmed. So even if they wanted to, and they knew how they can't, they don't have a gun. Sometimes I think being in the truth movement and constantly talking about these things and researching these things, we actually lose track of how fast things are changing. You know, because we're looking at so many different topics, and we don't focus on one particular topic long enough to realize how fast it's gotten so much worse. You're listening to Hardcore Harry, and I am death to the New World Order, streaming to you live at freethinkradio.com, unitedtruthseekers.com, and eternally at d2nwo.com.
Authorities, meanwhile, in the Philippines have uncovered an alleged high-tech terrorist financing operation that hacked into the phone accounts of businesses, some potentially right here in the United States. CNN's Brian Todd has been investigating this story for us. So, Brian, what are you learning? How did this all work?
Well, it's unclear right now how it all worked. We may never know the real extent of the damage, Wolf, that these alleged hackers did. But if Philippine authorities are right, the 4 people they caught might have done enough hacking to pay for several terrorist operations.
Philippine police say they've uncovered an efficient, potentially deadly operation. A small group of phone hackers funneling money to terrorists. Working with the FBI, Philippine authorities say they arrested 4 people in the Manila area who they say hacked into the system of AT&T and ripped off nearly $2 million. AT&T says its network was not targeted or breached by the hackers, but individual businesses with AT&T accounts were, and AT&T wrote off the fraudulent charges.
We spoke with people familiar with how this likely worked, and here's the scenario they laid out. Say I'm working in a store or other business that has an AT&T account. The hackers would tap into the AT&T business phones, use those phones to call premium service phone lines like 900 numbers, which charge extra for those calls. Except in this case, the premium service companies were bogus, set up by the hackers themselves. The hackers would use the premium service lines to bill back the AT&T business account and collect the money.
Anup Ghosh, founder of cybersecurity firm Invincia, says it would have been relatively easy for the hackers to tap into business phones and set up the bogus premium service companies.
How could they have racked up all these charges and me, as an official of that business, not find out about it until it's too late?
Well, you're going to get to your phone bills, and essentially they have a 30-day window in which they can rack up these charges as much as they want before you even get a chance to review it. At that point, if you're in a large business, you have lots of employees making calls. You may or may not notice that these are legitimate or illegitimate calls.
The Philippine police say the group which paid these hackers is linked to Jemaah Islamiyah, an al-Qaeda-affiliated terrorist network responsible for the 2002 bombings in Bali, Indonesia that killed more than 200 people. Western law enforcement officials we spoke to could not corroborate that. But $2 million in the hands of any terrorist group is significant.
How much does it take to finance a major terrorist attack?
Well, you know, the 9/11 attacks cost about $500,000, but even like the attack in London on July 7th, 2005 cost about $15,000. That killed 52 people.
Peter Bergen says that Bali, Indonesia attack by Jemaah Islamiyah in 2002 cost about $50,000. So that means that 3 of the highest profile attacks against Western targets cost less than 1/3 the amount these hackers made away with. All of that money going directly to a terrorist group. Well, plenty of money to stage a terrorist attack.
You've spoken, it's pretty chilling. You've spoken to a lot of experts. How could a business protect itself from this?
Well, that expert we spoke to, Anup Ghosh, says it's impossible to completely shield yourself, but he says 3 things you have to do. Number 1, an external firewall has to be very strong on the outside. Number 2, the business has to review its phone records very carefully. The businesses, most of them, don't do that. And third, everyone inside the business, like here at CNN, everywhere else, should have a strong password for your own phone. A lot of people, once they're in their office buildings, don't have that.
What about private individuals who may have AT&T home service?
Again, that's up to you. Review your own phone records. Again, businesses, they go a long time sometimes, thousands of calls. You as a private phone owner can do that pretty easily. Also, if you can come up with some kind of password for your cell phone, with your home phone, that's hard. With your cell phone, come up with a strong password. That's the key. These hackers can get through a lot of it, but if you have those things in place, you may be able to protect yourself.
A whole chilling new world out there. Yeah. Thanks very much, Brian. Pretty scary stuff.
Yeah, chilling new world out there. You know, it was interesting. My wife and I were somewhere the other day, and she said something that seemed pretty true, which is that there's no payphones anymore. She was looking at a place where there used to be a payphone, and the payphone was gone. And this was outside. I don't know when's the last time I've seen a payphone. It's been years. Where did all the payphones go? Is there an orchestrated effort to make sure nobody can ever make a phone call anonymously? They just ran a news story that concluded with, you got to secure your phone, make sure you have a tight password on your phone and nobody can use your phone. Yes, that's exactly what they're doing, folks. They're making sure nobody can make a phone call anonymously. That's exactly what they're doing. All that stuff they talked about was probably all a lie. Maybe there was a grain of truth to it. But the point of the story was to get you to put a password on your phone, make sure nobody could ever use it. Make you afraid to even let somebody use your phone. Even a relative says, hey, can I borrow your phone for a second? You'll remember this story, if not consciously. You'll remember it subconsciously. And you'll be afraid to let them use your phone. That's what the story was for. Now, give me a moment here, because looking at my clock, I've got 19 minutes left. I need to eliminate some time here so that we can get Carrie in on time, and that should do it. Carrie will be coming up next, and she'll be interviewing the author of a book pertaining to, and let me scroll back into Skype and see if I can find it. Boy, they've been talking a lot. Okay, whatever. Carrie Lee's going to be up next at 8 p.m. here on freethinkradio.com, and she will be talking about the, I guess you'd have to use the term genocide in Canada of the natives, the young children who were found in mass graves behind the, I believe, Catholic schools. Don't quote me on that, but this was a recent discovery. The natives were very upset, and rightfully so. She'll be talking about that in 20 minutes here at freethinkradio.com. And so, when you watch the news, what I need you to learn from that last story is it's not about the news story they present. It's about how they wrap up the news story. Okay? They could have been talking about jungle gyms and playgrounds. Doesn't matter. When they wrap up the story telling you that you need to make sure your phone has a very strong password, that was what the story was for. You understand? You have to look at a news story and say, what are they trying to make me think? What are they trying to make me feel? What are they trying to make me believe? What are they trying to make me do? And that right there was a story where they're trying to make you do something. And anytime they run a quote-unquote news story and they're telling you point blank to do something, you can almost be guaranteed every single time that story is just BS. It's an out-and-out lie. It's something they made up to get you to do what they want you to do. If you're not yet seeing the world the way that I'm seeing it right now, you are not awake. You may know that 9/11 was an inside job, but you're not fully awake until you realize everything on the news is designed to influence your behavior, to change your thinking. That's the only reason the news is there. You understand? The news isn't there for your entertainment. The news isn't there for your enlightenment. The news is there to change you into what they want you to be. You know, back in the day, Hillary Clinton said point blank. Hold on, what did she say? I can't remember the first half of her sentence. But she said, the second half of her sentence was, and I quote, "The America we are trying to create." You can Google it right now. Put it in quotes. Put Hillary Clinton and then put in quotes, "The America we're trying to create." She said that. I know this because my first website, coverup.us, I made a giant silhouette target of Bill and Hillary Clinton. And I had some of their quotes on there, and that was the one that I had on there from her. Of course, Pelosi saying, you have to pass the bill so that you can see what is in it. I mean, there's some quotes that just stand out as so blatantly, I mean, it just makes you want to hit them with a baseball bat right in the face. It's just unbelievable. It's cognitive dissonance, psychological manipulation. That's what they're doing to you. You're listening to Hardcore Harry, and I am death to the New World Order, streaming to you live at freethinkradio.com, unitedtruthseekers.com, and eternally at d2nwo.com.
Jack Cafferty's here with the Cafferty File. Jack.
What's wrong with this picture? A lot, actually. The United States ranks 28th in life expectancy, and yet we pay more for health care than any other country in the industrialized world. 34-nation Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development is out with a rather stunning report on all this. It shows 27 nations live longer than we do, led by Japan. Yet Americans pay nearly $8,000 per person per year for health care, more than any other country in this report. Only a handful of countries in the report have a lower life expectancy: Mexico, Estonia, and Turkey. Meanwhile, despite high spending on health care in the United States, Americans actually get less care than many other nations. Our primary care system suffers from shortages of family doctors, along with high rates of avoidable hospital admissions for common illnesses like asthma, diabetes, or high blood pressure. America also leads all nations when it comes to expensive medical procedures, things like knee replacements, MRIs, and CT scans. As for pharmaceuticals, they cost about 60% more here in the U.S. than in most European countries. There are some positives for the U.S. healthcare system. We have among the world's highest survival rates for breast and colorectal cancer. Also, Americans generally get very good acute hospital care. But overall, there is no doubt our healthcare system is broken, and that, along with questionable lifestyle choices, means we're not living as long as we could. Here's the question. The U.S. is 28th in life expectancy. What is killing America? Go to cnn.com/Cafferty File, post a comment on my blog, or go to our post on the Situation Room's Facebook page. Wolf.
All right, Jack, good question. Thank you. Let's go to Jack. He's got the Cafferty File. Jack.
Question this hour. The United States is 28th in life expectancy. What's killing America? Gary in Arizona, diet and exercise, Jack. Simple as that. We eat the wrong things. We don't exercise. We become a fat, slovenly bunch who smoke, drink, use drugs, and generally abuse life with dumb habits. We become our own worst enemy when it comes to living a long life. Rick writes, if you have to ask, you haven't been looking at people. Obesity. Jan in Washington, food, drink, and a lack of affordable health care. A lot of the most affordable food is loaded with carbs and sugars. A large share of shopping carts leaving supermarkets have cases of beer, soda, and chips in them. The store flyers and mailers have far better sales on these items than on fresh fruits and vegetables. Gordon in New Jersey writes, overeating, TV, corporate greed, and a medical industry that caters first to patients with money, second to patients with good benefits, and third, well, the funeral industry takes care of them. Jay writes, easy one, putting profits above the well-being of fellow citizens. Every other decent country on earth has figured out that health care is not the moral place to try to make a buck. Selfish greed is what's killing America. Bob in Maryland writes, it's easy. As I'm sitting here eating a hot dog for dinner, I'm sure my counterpart in Japan's eating some nutritionally rich sushi. We just have bad habits and we're lazy. Maybe the recession will get more Americans off their butts and rethinking our choices. And Terry in Indiana writes, speaking of life expectancy, Jack, who's going to take your place? If you want to read, thank you. If you want to read more on this, you go to my blog, cnn.com/CaffertyFile, or through our posts on the Situation Room's.
All right, that's enough of them. Now, interestingly, I was talking earlier that I'm going to try the raw food diet starting January 2nd, and they're talking about health, the healthcare industry, eating habits, and such, and that's really what it's all about. The raw food diet is designed, it's twofold. It's to get you to stop eating the toxins, the poisons, the bad food, and to get you to start eating food that hasn't had the vitamins and the nutrients cooked out of it. When you cook your food, when you heat it up, you lose a lot of the stuff that's good for it, especially when you microwave it. You're microwaving it. What do you think? It's radiation. So the raw food diet is designed to get you to stop radiating your food, stop getting you cooking the good stuff out of it. I'm going to start that January 2nd. I will be, commenting on that during each broadcast. I don't know how far I'll make it. I might only make it a day or two. And let's face it, you got to mix up a bunch of, you got to go to the store and buy the stuff. Then you got to figure out how to put it together, and then it's going to be a big, big hassle, and I don't have time for this kind of stuff, so I'll give it a try. We'll see what happens. But once I realize I don't have the time or patience to make raw foods according to the recipes, and I start just bringing home bunches of bananas and living off bananas so that I can avoid eating meat, bananas and walnuts? That's what I'm eating day in, day out, bananas and walnuts. That's not going to last long. So we'll see how it goes. But again, getting back to the documentary that we watched, it was called Simply Raw. And it did show people getting off of their insulin and being cured of diabetes. That's not to say if they went home and picked up their old eating habits, they would not have been diabetic again, because they would have. But if they kept eating the way they were eating during that 30 days they spent on the raw food diet, they would never be diabetic again. And so the only thing better than being cured of diabetes is never getting it to begin with. And that's why I'm going to try the raw food diet, because I'm having trouble losing a little bit of weight. And I hear from many, many people, and you'll hear this in the broadcast that I did, which you can find by going to YouTube and putting in D2NWO raw food. D2NWO raw food. I did a broadcast on this. I interviewed somebody who's on the raw food diet. He and many others have told me that once you are on the raw food diet, you can think better. When you get the toxins, when you get the poisons out, you can think better, you can think clearer, and that's what I need. You're listening to Hardcore Harry, and I am death to the New World Order, streaming to you live at freethinkradio.com, unitedtruthseekers.com, and eternally at d2nwo.com.
Just a few of us from the beginning. Just a few of us standing in the end. Just a few of us, it's more than just winning. Just a few of us, mission heaven sent. Now there's a few of us There's a few of us blinded by deception. Still a few of us who care to understand. And there's still a few of us who hear the voice of reason. Being sanctified and purified this land. Faith is strong enough to move any mountain. Faith is strong enough, it's deeper than the seas. Faith is strong enough to climb every mountain. Faith is strong enough to gather you and me.
I can't do this alone, guys. Send people to d2nwo.com. Get people tuned into this show. Tell them the
The United
truth.
States is a shining jewel the globalists want to bring down, and they will use terrorism as the pretext to get it done. So that's coming up in the second half of the show. Very important.
Up next, Carrie Lee here at freethinkradio.com.